And we are live. Welcome back to Spotlight Fridays. And guess what? It is a Friday today. I
Thank
think
God.
it's Spotlight Friday series number 7. I'm not sure. I stopped counting just because I'm having so much fun with my guests. And today, a very special invitation to a very special guest. Everyone is very special, guys, just in case you've been watching this every single week. But I worked out, Trent, that I've known you the longest out of all my guests that have been on Spotlight Fridays so
Is that
far.
right? Well, there you go. I
Yes,
feel even more special to be here.
amazing. And it is a very special treat for all of us. So I would like to know who's joining us live. As always, if you can just say hello and or just drop in an emoji in the comment section, that would be amazing. So at least we know that you joined us live. And
Mhm.
we'll start our chat and then we'll have some time for questions. So if you do have any questions during our chat, please drop them in the comment section as well.
I think a few
Let's
of
take
my
it
colleagues
away.
have joined. So for anyone who's from Insider, no abusive messages directed at me, please.
I love this. This is how, this is why it's unscripted because anything can happen.
Always.
And Trent, I really look forward to this conversation. So just in case there are people and maybe they've been living under the rock, I don't know, who don't
hmm
know you, can you please
hmm
introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Trent. I'm essentially one of the sales guys at Insider, who's well, we feel the world's leading personalization and automation platform here in Australia. I work from home up here in Brizzy. However, our office is in Sydney. Um, yeah, look, I've been at Insider for about 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was at a company called Commission Factory. It was still a very successful affiliate marketing network. And yeah, like that was a really fun ride. I was employee number 5 there. We scaled the business to around about 60 and then sold it. And not long after, that's when I made the move back to being I suppose, a sales guy at Insider and really haven't had time to think since in the 3.5 years. But yeah, I suppose that's a little bit about my professional life. Away from that, I'm a family man. I've got a now 3-year-old boy as of this morning. We
Happy birthday.
Yes, yeah, little Connor. He had a great morning. He's never seen so many diggers and dump trucks in his life. And I've got a daughter who turns 5 next month. So it's a full book between Insider and our rapid growth as well as the family.
Yes, you are full steam ahead. So we met about what, over 10 years ago when you were
hmm
still at Commission Factory. So
hmm
I've seen the entire journey unfolding in front of me. I must say, you have an incredible personality traits. You're very personable. You remember, I think, every single conversations in every single meeting, and you just always turn it into a positive, even though throughout our professional relationships we've had and had to have a few quite tough discussions respectfully, but you
hmm
always recovered from it very well, and here we are.
Recover is the word. Absolutely. No, thank you. I think these are conscious things, right? So trying to look for the positive in a situation. Like I'll probably talk about my kids a lot. That's just they always come to mind. But one of the things we do now, our kids are a little bit older; they're not like tiny babies anymore. Is we try to at dinner talk about something that was good today or something we're grateful for. For when we adults talk, that's what we're talking about. We also try to talk about something that was difficult or something bad that happened today for the kids. But the most important part of that exercise is then we look for the positive in the bad or the challenging thing. So if someone got called a name at school, we talk about how that made them feel and something good that came of it. Like they realized that there are other kids to play with and they went and played with them instead. So that's something I try to take into my own life is to look at the positive side of things. And the memory thing, I'm not a good listener at all. I try really hard, and it's again, I'm a sales guy, so it's kind of comes with the territory, but I work pretty hard on trying to be quiet as much as I love to talk. And when someone else finally gets the chance in between my long diatribes like this one, I try to listen hard.
not the time for you to listen. The spotlight is on you, my friend. So if there are any time at all, this is the time for you to talk about you. Because, the idea behind Spotlight Fridays was to put the spotlight on anyone in my network, to introduce you to the community of wonderful people on LinkedIn and beyond. So that when people get to know you a little bit better as a person and also as a professional as well. So when someone has a problem, then I would like them, whatever the problem is, I would like them to think, okay, well, this is the person I need to connect with because they're going to be very helpful for me. So that's the idea behind Spotlight Fridays.
Yeah.
And so probably it's a perfect segue for you to tell us what it is that you do as Insider.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, me personally, again, I suppose one of the reasons I took a step back from kind of operational management and running teams of people is to just sort of work one-on-one with businesses again and kind of help them solve their problems. So I suppose that's what I do at Insider. What Insider does specifically, we're first and foremost a customer data platform. So we import all of the sort of different customer data that's sitting in different systems. You might have an email system, you might have a data warehouse, a POS system offline. And what we sort of know is that a lot of those systems don't talk very well. So for us, the first goal is to kind of unify that customer profile, so you've got a single view of that customer. And then the personalization element comes in. So I suppose whether we're talking, everyone has a different definition of personalization, and we can totally sort of talk about that. But whether it's sort of an email journey or a personalized message of some other kind, for me, I often think about interactions that people are having in sort of the web or the app environment. For us, now that we've got that single view of the customer, we try to give a really sort of personalized experience wherever we're talking to them. So that's what Insider does. And yeah, it's quite a broad range, as I said. And as you know, Anna, things like product recommendations, website search and merchandising, all of that ties into that cohesive kind of personalized, consistent experience.
I do want to go back to that definition, what it as personalization means to you a little bit later, if you don't mind. But I would like to go dive into these practical tips that you were planning on sharing with us. And
Mm.
again, this is not rehearsed. This is all you just mentioned to me that you will be sharing. So I'm just going to guide you in that direction. But maybe let's just kick it off with saying how automations can improve customer experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of a limitless way, to be honest with you, in terms of how automations can improve customer experience. Ultimately, the additional benefit of automation in particular. So we talk about kind of cross-channel journeys, email, SMS, WhatsApp, even kind of tying in those chat environments like Facebook Messenger, etc., WhatsApp chats within those kind of journeys. The benefit to the business is kind of reducing workload for people having to send out EDMs and different campaigns and building segments. Ideally, we look to kind of automate all of those processes so people can do that kind of simply. But then for the customer, it's kind of more around interpreting future needs and around that personalization question. What does good personalization look? I think that's one of the markers, right? If you're kind of coming to me with what I need before I even realize I need it, a lot of the time, to me, that's sort of like, and it's very broad and anecdotal, but that is like world class sort of personalization, understanding my future intent and getting in front of it.
So maybe identifying the channels how I want the brand to engage with me, because not everyone's on Messenger or on WhatsApp. It just people use different means to communicate and connect with each other, with the brands, with the businesses as well. So maybe identifying that and reduce any potential friction around that is also very, very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, kind of within automation, the word AI gets thrown around a lot, and I don't consider myself an AI expert, unlike a lot of people out there. But you know, utilizing the AI to understand where a customer is most likely to interact based off previous interactions, that can be a step in kind of that personalized experience. If if the platform knows that Trent opens his emails at 5 a.m. and can then make sure the emails are landing in my inbox at 5 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. when I'm starting work and really busy, because I've read 70% of my emails at 5 a.m. from that company, and you can tailor that accordingly, then that's a personalized experience. I get an email when I've got time to read it and I can action it, as opposed to when it goes to the 90% that probably don't even get opened.
This is gold. I get it from that you're an early riser.
I beg your pardon?
You mentioned 5 a.m., so I get it that you wake up very early.
I either get woken up or I wake up early at, yeah, around that time every morning.
Naturally, with it's 3 and 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to unpack the psychology behind why people buy with
Mm.
you.
Yeah, I love that. That's kind of like, I've been doing this selling in some way, shape, or form my entire life. Like, I think back to my own childhood, and even back then I was like a sales guy, right? I was selling people on me and to like me and to play with me and to think I'm funny and all these other things. And that's just, I'm lucky that I've sort of been able to build a career out of it, because I really enjoy it. It took me a long time to realize it's the psychology behind it that I enjoy so much. So 20 minutes isn't going to be enough, but I could talk about this all day. So
Let's do it.
I can take it any way you want, but I think the sort of the foundational text for me on sort of social psychology as it relates to selling, or at least the foundational author, is a guy called Robert Cialdini, and he has these 6 weapons of influence, he calls them. Um, and yeah, like when I think back to what I did as a kid, what I do now, a lot of these things I naturally do, and a lot of these things are terms that you hear like social proof and scarcity. These are all fundamental psychological principles that Cialdini talks about in his book, and I think that was written in the 80s, that book, 1984. And then I think from memory, and then uh, Daniel Kahneman came along not so long after that. It's his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is probably the other one I would encourage everyone to kind of read if they're interested in these sort of psychological phenomena. Um, yeah, so bit of a spiel there, but I suppose what they have in common, and what I love about it, is there's certain things that consumers identify with and respond to without even realizing. It's almost an automated response in the vast majority of people, and yeah, it's fascinating to witness.
Listen, you definitely used the 6 weapons of influence on me, because you sold it to me twice, and both were very big contracts. So you're naturally gifted at that for sure.
Well, I just think you're incredibly perceptive, and you know great value when you see it, Anna.
Well, here we go. We belong to the what is it called? The mutual admiration club. I'll call
Must
it
be.
like that.
Must be. I
Okay.
wasn't I wasn't just selling to you at all then by giving you a compliment. But
Here you
a
go.
compliment is one of those examples, right? Even people that say they hate compliments don't even realize they love compliments. Everyone does. You
No, I
can't
think
turn it
those
off
people who tell you that they don't like them, the ones who like them.
more often than not. But it's an example of what I was talking about, these sort of unconscious biases that we all have. And I used the example of scarcity before. If we think, FOMO is a word that gets thrown a lot around. If we're going to miss out on something, we want it more. If we get a compliment,
So,
even if we think we don't like it, deep down in our brain, in our like reptile brain, we loved it. We loved it.
of course, like, yes, I agree. All right. And the simple strategies to boost retention and loyalty.
Oh God, I mean, there's so many. Like I think when I think about the things that people ask me, every single person, I talk to hundreds of retailers every single year, maybe even thousands. And I think the most common 2 things that I hear are always around conversion rate. So I always hear, it's funny though, because I hear everyone wanting a better conversion rate, but I don't see people putting the time, effort, and resource into conversion rate optimization as I see them funneling into all the big ticket like paid channels to get new customers through the door. There's that old rule or cliche or whatever. For every $90, I think it is, you spend on paid advertising, you should be spending 10 on optimizing the conversion rate of that traffic. But I feel I don't think there's hardly any retailers that stick to that. The second thing is like A/B testing. And so I so often see businesses, again, big and small, make really big changes. And it's very, off a very small amount of data, or sometimes it's a gut feeling. And it's great when one of those things works off and it's verifiable that it's worked and it's paid off. But more often than not, people aren't testing these inferences. They're sort of formulating a hypothesis, and they're sort of making a change. Maybe it goes well, maybe it doesn't, but most importantly, they're not testing, at least not to a precise level, what that kind of change was and what the difference was. So yeah, look, there's a lot within that, but happy to kind of tie it back as best I can to those different kind of weapons of influence. Yeah, so where would we start? So practical tips on retention. I think talking to your customers is one of the first like ones that I don't see people do enough. So, you know, I know you're a big fan, Anna, of surveys, and surveys are still one of these tools that I don't think the vast majority of businesses utilize. And I'm not just talking about the customers that love them, the kind of echo chamber of people that they want to keep happy and are buying off them all the time. I'm talking about customers that have churned. So people who did love you but fell out of love with you. What can we do to get their thoughts on things? Is there something we can offer them to tell us why they don't love us anymore? Sounds bad, right? But that's one example that I think about.
Yes, Saul just said that you're speaking his language. Yes, Saul, we know because we read your posts on LinkedIn every single day, the conversion
I
guy.
I learn a lot from Sol, I have to say, honestly. Again, I don't think I'm an expert at all. I just know what I've seen work. I think Sol is someone better to talk to around CRO, for example, than possibly even I am. But yeah, like I'm a big fan of what you put out there, mate.
You know, the customer feedback, so it's one of the retention strategies. But, you know, I come across it every single day. Every time I convince the retailer to do the survey, I
Hmm.
have a feeling, due to the very high opt-in rates, that customers just waiting for the brands to ask them about their opinion, literally. Just because as soon as you send out, it's the feedback, it starts flooding back in, which
Hmm.
is amazing. And I could
Hmm.
see there is an opportunity to actually discuss it with one of my clients, a large retailer, the opportunity through product reviews as well. Even
Hmm.
when people don't leave you a 5 star, especially when they leave you between 1 and 3 stars, because most of the time they leave the feedback around it as well. So it's a very good opportunity for customer service to jump on and deal with that person based on their feedback and turn it into a positive, because you can always turn it into something very positive. Otherwise it
That's
just
right.
goes into the cyberspace. So I
Yeah,
agree
I
with
think there's this podcast I listen to about property investment, and they finish every episode by saying knowledge is power, but only if you use it. So it's the same with data. So if you take that survey example, and that's great. If you're surveying any of your customers, I would say you're ahead of the game already as it relates to kind of what a lot of other retailers are doing. In terms of those psychological kind of principles, the things that you've just talked about, Anna, sort of the brand reaching out to customers, customers really being keen to share that feedback, that feeds into one of these weapons of influence called liking. So we like people that want to hear from us. We like people that give us compliments, that we have things in common with. And so if it's a brand that we're buying from, we like them already and we love that they want to know what we think. So that's kind of the psychological principle that it talks about. In terms of your second point around using that data, so something that we do with our surveys at Insider, for example, is the responses to those surveys. Like it's great to like look at the data firstly, if you remember, and have time and can interpret it without a data scientist. You know, we try to keep it pretty simple with what we do, but one of the practical applications is storing the responses to those surveys as attributes against a customer. So if we think back to that single customer view, if all of those customers that we surveyed that said, how likely are you to buy again within the next 6 months? If all of them that said, very unlikely, if we target all them in a particular flow as a automated kind of action based off that response to the survey, with maybe some dynamic content or product or information related to whatever they weren't happy about or we think the opportunity with them is, or if you're, really need to, maybe offer them an incentive to come back and buy. I think that's a good example of how we can automatically use that survey data to reactivate those customers, for example.
Brilliant. I agree with you. There are so many touch points for data. This is just for us to identify how to use it in a way that serves the customer better and provide that better experience. That's what it's all about. And yes, it's if you don't use it, it's useless. You're just throwing out money for an expensive tech. But if it is, and if you channel it in the right way, then it could be exceptionally beneficial, and it can add lots of money to the bottom line as well. I
Mm.
agree. Yes, it does sound like we can talk for hours, and we've just started to unpack a few things. Maybe you should come back for another chat in a few weeks' time,
I
and we'll as a
would
continue on.
I would love that. Yeah, there's so many other things within those sort of biases and that social psychology, which, again, I could kind of I would love to talk to you. I would love to come back and talk about, if nothing else, the idea of reciprocity. So the idea of me being more likely to give you something since I've been given something from you. Again, that feeds into the previous point around surveys and gifts with purchase and what retailers do, whether it's a free Tim Tam here or a handwritten note there. There's a lot to be said for the power of reciprocity and what it costs versus what you get back in customer loyalty. So yeah, look, would love to come back and talk anytime, Anna. Would love to talk about some more practical tips, but if I want to sort of revise those, I would say not enough people, in my experience, test their theories, at least in a detailed way. So A/B testing everything, even A/B testing your A/B tests, as silly as that sounds, and CRO as a secondary to that. So looking at the traffic you've already got and how you can sort of convert them better. I know it's obvious. I know everyone does it in some way, but I think there's a big difference between what good kind of personalization and CRO working hand in hand look like. And the last one, which we didn't have time to talk about, was underutilization of tech. You hinted at this in something you said earlier, but again, I think there's a whole half an hour in talking about what you would have seen in your career for people paying a fortune for tech that they never use.
Yes, absolutely. And you can help the retailers to stitch it all together.
I would love to
So
do that.
now we know. Now we
So
know.
anyone who wants to reach out to me, my LinkedIn should be attached to this. So I'm happy to continue the chat with you.
And if you can answer the questions that our viewers popped into the chat, that would be amazing after the recording.
Can
Everyone,
do.
as always, thank you so much for joining us. We tried to fit it in. What started with 10 minutes and now just stretches into half an hour, but be it. If you don't have the time, you can always jump off. But we just love having these chats. And now you know at what point to reach out to Trent, and not only when you need a letter. He is a very tall guy, but also when you have any automations and retention and personalization issues in your brand and in your business. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank
Pleasure.
you
Thank you for
very
having me.
much for listening to us as well. Thanks, everyone. Happy Friday.
See you guys. Enjoy the weekend.